All right, welcome back to the channel. So Demetrius Andrade puts Charlo on blast and Canelo Alvarez on blast and Billy Joe Saunders for ducking him and saying that none of those dudes can beat him, and they know it, and that's why they're trying to avoid that fight. I don't agree with that, but let's talk about what he has to say. Well, I don't agree with all of it, but let's talk about what Boo Boo Andrade has to say in this video. All right, welcome back. So we're going to talk about Demetrius Andrade, who has a bit of a problem in that he is, if you stereotyped a fighter that would have a hard time in boxing getting big fights and getting the recognition that he deserved, Boo Boo Andrade would be, he's absolutely the prototype for that type of situation. He's a southpaw. He's an extremely good fighter. He's not a big knockout puncher, but somebody that can frustrate you and whoop you for 12 rounds and make it relatively easy. And I think he can do that against guys of all skill levels because he is that talented a fighter, but his fighting style and some of his personal decisions have gotten in the way of what should be a stellar career for a guy that is an absolute top-notch talent, as talented as anybody in boxing, I do believe. Different skill sets than say, or a different approach to fighting than say Terrence Crawford. But from what I can see, every bit as talented. And he feels as if because of these things that I mentioned, he's getting avoided by Charlo, by Canelo Alvarez, and Demetrius and Billy Joe Saunders. And he actually said that he had a conversation with Billy Joe Saunders where Billy Joe Saunders said, hey, how about fighting us? And he got the sense that Billy Joe Saunders really doesn't want any part of that fight. Before I get into the truth or the falseness of that, man, let me take a second to say thank you to everybody that supports the channel, supports the channel on the Patreon, supports the channel in the live streams that we do Monday through Friday and OG Boxing Talk on Sunday with your super chats and your cash apps. It's so much appreciated. And also everybody that is a channel member. So Demetrius Andrade, I do believe that he is the most avoided fighter at 168 pounds. I agree with him 100%. Because there is a record, and I think it is a fair thing to say based on the record is probably the better way to say it, that everybody, all of the people that were champions at the same time he's been champion at 160 pounds have avoided him. The first guy that avoided him is, the big, quote unquote, the big money man in boxing, the face of boxing, like people like to say. Personally, I don't believe that there is a face of boxing. I think that the last face of boxing was Floyd Mayweather Jr. The last face of boxing before that was probably Mike Tyson. And the last face of boxing before that was Muhammad Ali. I think that you really have to get to a level where you are just, universally recognized as one of the top, if not the top guy in all of sports in order to get that, you are the face of boxing. You're the one person. When you think of boxing, you think of this guy. I don't believe that's the case with Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo Alvarez, when you talk about the guys that are making the most money in the sport of boxing, then Canelo Alvarez definitely has to come up. But Canelo Alvarez avoided, if you want to say it more harshly, ducked Demetrius Andrade. So why would people say that how can I back that up? If you recall, after Gennady Golovkin after Canelo Alvarez fought Gennady Golovkin the last time, he won the WBC belt, he won the WBO belt, and he won the WBA belt. Or the IBF belt, right? Not the WBO, the WBC, the WBA, and the IBF. Demetrius Andrade held the WBO. So you would think with two guys who both fight on the same network, right? Same time, man, same network, and two promotional companies that have a working relationship with one another in Golden Boy and Matchroom Boxing. There's been a bunch of Matchroom fighters on Golden Boy cards with Canelo. So you would think that with undisputed sitting right there, that Canelo Alvarez could take that fight and become the undisputed champion at 160 pounds, or fight for it, or he could have lost a fight and had Demetrius Andrade be the undisputed champion. But the zone declined the fight. So, but Canelo, who has, with $36 million riding on it, and being the stature guy that he is in sports, he could have tried to make that. He could have made that fight happen. I didn't hear Canelo Alvarez or Oscar De La Hoya putting any pressure whatsoever on making that unification fight happen with Demetrius Andrade. So in my book, I consider that to be a duck, because he decided, instead of fighting the only other champion in that weight division, he decided to move up to 168 pounds and fight a guy named Rocky Fielding. So there you go. I think Demetrius Andrade definitely has some, there's credibility to Demetrius Andrade's argument about Canelo Alvarez. So the other guy who was a champion at that weight division when Demetrius Andrade moved up, and that is Billy Joe Saunders, they were actually set to have a fight with one another. But what happens? Billy Joe Saunders tests positive for a performance-enhancing drug which is some nasal spray, nafraxaline, something. I'm sure somebody in the comment section can tell me what the name of that particular performance-enhancing drug was. There's so many people getting popped for so many different performance-enhancing drugs. It's kind of hard to keep up with. Is it nafraxaline? Is it Dianabol like with Dillian White? Is it clenbuterol like Canelo Alvarez, or is it whatever that stuff is that Alejandro Jimenez got caught on? Just a bunch of stuff. So I don't know exactly what it was that Billy Joe Saunders tested positive for. Only thing that I know is that he threw a fit because it was allowed out of competition in the UK, but it's not allowed at all in the United States. Consequently, he gets suspended and he can't defend the fight. Now, when that happened, and he tested positive, did he try to come back and fight Demetrius Andrade for the WBO belt once that belt was on the line and Demetrius Andrade won it? What did Billy Joe Saunders do? Billy Joe Saunders went up to 168 pounds and fought some dude from Argentina and almost lost. But did not fight Demetrius Andrade. I think that counts as somebody that avoided Demetrius Andrade. Now, the last guy who became the WBC champion after Canelo Alvarez took the franchise belt is Jermall Charlo. And you hear both Jermall Charlo and Ronnie Shields say, well, why would I fight Demetrius Andrade? What is in it to fight Demetrius Andrade? Well, my answer is that there's the WBO belt if you fight Demetrius Andrade, and there's also you becoming a undisputed, you're becoming the only unified champion at 160 pounds, consequently putting yourself in a better position to get the fight with either Gennady Golovkin, the IBF champion, or Canelo Alvarez, the WBA champion, if that's what you want to do. But you'd have to go through you'd have to go through Demetrius Andrade to get it. And not that I believe that, Jermall Charlo is afraid to fight Demetrius Andrade or doesn't have the ability to win the fight. But there's just no other way that you can interpret that other than Jermall Charlo avoided Demetrius Andrade. Unless that is, the fight came up and then Demetrius Andrade found some way out of it like he did with Jermall Charlo. But that's not the case as of this moment. So you just got to kind of go with what Demetrius Andrade said. And yeah, man, this dude is the most avoided fighter in 160 pounds. I think that he might be, besides maybe like Luis Ortiz, the most avoided guy in all of boxing. It's hard for me to think, off the top of my head, whether there's anybody, along with Gary Russell Jr., Demetrius Andrade. Who else is out there that can't get a fight with a top dude to save their life? Primarily, it's those two southpaw fighters, Gary Russell Jr. and Demetrius Andrade, because people out there at 126 pounds act like Gary Russell Jr. doesn't even exist. Like, Shakur Stevenson is talking about, what did he say? He would wash Leo Santa Cruz at 130. He said the biggest fight that there is at 126 pounds is the fight with him and Josh Warrington. The only person to mention Shakur Stevenson and Gary Russell Jr. has been Gary Russell Jr. But that's the kind of boat that Demetrius Andrade finds himself in because of his style, because of his ability. Now, as far as how those fights turn out, I think that he very well could beat Canelo Alvarez. I think because Canelo Alvarez already lost to a guy with a similar style to that, which is Landy Lara. And I think at this point, Demetrius Andrade is every bit as good as Landy Lara is, and he actually might have a little bit more pop because I do believe he's a bigger guy. Billy Joe Saunders, he beats Billy Joe Saunders. I think Jermall Charlo would be a really good fight, but I think that is a fight that, like I said, that fight could go either way. That's a really difficult, awkward, talented fighter in Demetrius Andrade. And even though I'm not a big fan of Demetrius Andrade's and what he's done outside the ring, especially in his negotiations for fights, not any personal life stuff, but other than his wardrobe, dude, you got to get another designer, man. That stuff is a little too much. But anyway, I agree that he's getting avoided by all these guys, and it's a shame, and it should most definitely stop. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.